Yo, what's up? My name's Patrouski, and if you guys are like me and use my last 63 videos, 63 moneymakers in PokeMMO, you guys probably have way too much Pokeyen, just absolutely burning a hole in your pockets. So today, I'm going to give you guys 63 things to spend your Pokeyen on. Some of them are going to be useful and really pragmatic ways to advance your game plan and ways to make you more Pokeyen, and some are going to be very silly and just for collective or completionist progress. Let's go ahead and jump into it and drain all that hard-earned Pokeyen away from you guys. Number one is going to be a gym rerun team. This is probably one of the more pragmatic ones on this list. This is honestly an investment. This is a way for you to make more Pokeyen down the line. Now, right now, a really easy beginner gym rerun team, things like the Cottony plus Torkoal plus double Typhlosion plus double Blastoise, or even not even worrying about the double Blastoise yet, like just double Typhlosion plus the Cottony Torkoal, it's going to cost you under 100k Pokeyen. Now, the Blastoises alone can cost like 300k for both of them. You can kind of breed your own though and make them for a lot cheaper though if you're a little savvy about breeding. But generally, this whole team is going to cost you anywhere from 100,000 Pokeyen upwards up to like 3 to 4 to even 500,000 Pokeyen if you start considering things like the items to actually run them as well. And that may sound like a lot, but you're going to be able to easily make 300,000 Pokeyen a day profit by just doing your gym runs. Now, if you aren't familiar with gym runs in PokeMMO, I've got many guides on my channel. If you Google PokeMMO gym run guide, I'm sure 1 or 2 videos will pop up. There is also an advanced gym rerun guide from Xanarchy that uses a forum post with things like Hydreigon and other interesting, like more complicated Pokemon. That gym rerun is a lot harder and a lot more higher effort, but you do get a little bit more Pokeyen. But a little bit more Pokeyen per hour per day really does add up. So number one is whatever gym rerun team you are comfortable with. Number 2 is going to be XP items, XP charms, XP candies, rare candies. I have a massive stack of rare candies, XP candies, etc. Lucky eggs, for a couple different reasons. Number one, you often, no matter what type of player you are, PvP, PVM, shiny hunter, etc., you've got to XP train at some point, unless you pay someone else to do it, but you've got to do some XP training. So number one, just to assist your XP training, things like lucky eggs, XP charms, rare candies in a pinch at high levels, they can all be extremely financially worth it, honestly. Or you can make them as investments. Personally, I'm actually picking up a ton of XP items at the moment because raids are probably going to come up soon in PokeMMO, and I think once raids release, people will realize how many level 100 Pokemon they need. So I'm buying some as an investment. I also just keep some for my own purposes. Having stuff like that stocked up when they get cheap is super important. Number 3, carrying on the percentage benefits, let's cover donator status and shiny charms. So donator status is, if you're a shiny hunter, pretty decently worth it. Now, if you're not shiny hunting for at least like 2 to 3 hours a day, I might not recommend it. And even then, it's important to understand that you don't have to have donator status to be a shunter, nor do you need donator status to like shiny hunt, quote unquote, efficiently. Donator status and shiny charm are honestly just pissing away Pokeyen for a chance at more shinies. It's just a chance. 99% of the time, or I guess like 90% of the time, you're not gonna actually, it's not really going to affect anything. Now, donator status are way more effective than shiny charms. Shiny charms are really not worth it to 99% of shunters. Shiny charms are really expensive. I have videos talking about the math over this and why donor statuses are much better. So if you're curious, Google, is donor status worth it, or are shiny charms worth it PokeMMO? I should have videos on both of those. Shiny charms should only ever be popped on top of donator status, and they're really just a for fun thing. The only time shiny charms actually become efficient to use is if you're doing an egg hunt or a Shalfa hunt. Other than that, they're really just used for fun. But stocking up on donator status and shiny charms if you're doing shiny wars or are a big shunter can be super important. Next up, number 4 is a super expensive one. Shiny Pokemon to breed your shinies. That's right. In PokeMMO, if you buy other shiny Pokemon, you can actually breed up your OT shinies, but it's pretty expensive. Let me show you an example. All right, so I've got 2 examples I can show you here. One is a male Dugtrio, and then the other is a female shiny Nidoran. Let's start with the female Nidoran, as that's an easier breed to do. Usually having a female shiny is less complicated than if you have a male. So what I would do is I would check the egg group, monster field. I would go over to shinies. I would go over to, let's check field first, since field is probably cheaper than monster. Go pay for the male gender. We have 31 defense on our on our Nidoran, and we have very, very low HP. You know what? Let's try to get that HP stat up. Let's do 31 HP. Let's do like 21 plus special defense so that that can high roll, and try to look for like 25 plus speed, right? So if we sort by that, by the lowest, we're going to find a Rapidash that costs 2.9 million Pokeyen, so around 3 million Pokeyen. Probably a really good breeder for this. I'd buy this. I'd brace the HP. I'd brace the defense, and I would hope that those other stats roll up a little bit. But 3 million Pokeyen for a breeder, now that's pretty expensive. Let's go check out our male shiny. Now it depends on the shiny. Sometimes it's cheaper to breed a male, usually cheaper to breed a female, but let's go check out, I believe Dugtrio is field age group if I'm not mistaken. Yep, just field. So for this, you've got to look for a female, for a male shiny, and I have guides on this. Look up shiny breeding guide PokeMMO, but I'm going to need I'm actually going to need a shiny Diglett or Dugtrio or a Ditto. That's the only way. If I want to breed up this Dugtrio, the only way I can do it is by buying a female shiny Dugtrio or Diglett to breed with him, which going for this 31 speed one is honestly pretty good. Since this one's 31 attack, I can just brace them both and hope for a usable nature. Or I could buy that Diglett, honestly decently priced. It has some good stats that I could high roll. I could get rid of that 0 attack, make it 31. The speed would stay low though, which is unfortunate. You don't really need the defenses on Dugtrio, you really just want the speed and attack. Or you could search for Dittos, which are obviously much more expensive. Since this is a male shiny, to keep my OT, I do need to breed it with a same species, female, or just a Ditto. So that's breeding up your shinies. You can breed up the IVs and make competitive shinies, but it's going to cost you some solid Pokeyen. Next up, number 5 is just collecting or buying good breeders to either save and keep, or breeding for profit. You can do a couple different things here. I do this thing called breeding extravaganzas, where I essentially set up a ton of breeds. I'll put like a ton of different breeds together. I'll pre-brace them. I'll Everstone them. I'll basically, let's say these Pokemon would breed well together. You know, I'd get a breed set up, and I would set up like 2 or 3 boxes full of good breeds, and then I will pop a Thunder status, pop a Charm, and breed all of them just one day, hoping for the random chance of getting a shiny competitive Pokemon. To me, that's very fun. That's what I call a breeding extravaganza. Now, I know most people don't do that sort of thing, which is understandable, but I think paying Pokeyen or spending one of them to buy, you can breed for profit and make a ton more money. Breeding for profit is one of the best ways to make Pokeyen in PokeMMO, especially right now. It's ridiculous right now because good IV Pokemon are so cheap that catching good IV Pokemon is not that good, but breeding for profit is really good when that's usually the case. So just buying good breeders to sit on for a while and collect for when you want to do breeding, like breeding extravaganzas, or just breeding for profit on the spot, are all fantastic ways to spend your Pokeyen to make more Pokeyen. Next up, number 6, not something I do very often, but buying 5x31 or 6x31 competitive Pokemon. Buying perfect competitive Pokemon is not something that I usually recommend or do unless you're like a very competitive, intense PvP player. But I think it's a fun thing to collect them. I think most of the time going for 5x31 or 6x31 with correct nature is better for collective purposes than the benefits in PvP. It depends. Obviously, speed's important. You do need 31 speed, but a lot of the time you can get away with like 25 plus defense on a Starmie, for example. However, I think going above and beyond and just having those pure 5x31 Pokemon or 6x31 with correct nature is super important. This Starmie is honestly a really good example. Timid, 5x31 in every stat except for attack, which doesn't really need if it's not running Rapid Spin. It depends on the moveset. But like, this competitive Pokemon will always be good. It'll always be relevant. It'll always be worth Pokeyen. Now, maybe Starmie falls off due to power creep or whatever, and it falls to UU. It'll still be good in UU. It might fall to NU. Like, it's pretty rare a Pokemon falls into total obscurity. It does happen, to be fair, but even then, like, those Pokemon are good as breeders, right? So let's say that let's check Untiered, for example. Let's say that I mean, back in 2013, Charizard was a relevant NU threat, right? Even back in 2013, he was like still in NU. But nowadays, he's totally fallen off, kind of unusable, right? At least a male or a female Charizard, it's still a good breeder for other things. So having that 5x31, you're always going to be able to make money back on that quote-unquote investment later down the line if you ever want to sell it, versus it's harder to make Pokeyen when selling like a 2x31, 25 plus, but those are better for personal use generally in terms of money to value. Number 7 is going to be sealed product. Whether to invest in or to gamble, I highly recommend the first one. Investing is super good. As you can see, I have 500 Xmas Presents 2021s. I have tons of random sealed product all around, red envelopes, pumpkin goodie bags, mysterious balls are one that I've been talking about and ranting about forever. 350 mysterious great balls. Like, I have most of my net worth is tied up in sealed product as an investment. Think of it as, if you're familiar with trading cards, buying sealed product in trading card games. Look at like base set Pokemon, you know, Alpha, Magic the Gathering, for examples. Old Pokemon cards, old sealed products tend to go up in value because there's only so much of it. People want to open it for nostalgia. People want to open it to gamble. There are items that are in these that are worth tons of money. That's why they go up over time, is because those items in them end up gaining value over. So there's a limited item. You can only get it from these products. So if you can only get it from these products, eventually they just go up over time. There's no reprinting of cards in PokeMMO, so there really will only be that limited supply for the rest of eternity. Now, no investment is perfect and no investment is guaranteed, but the most guaranteed investment you'll ever see in PokeMMO is probably sealed product. What you usually want to do is buy the sealed product during the events itself. So, for example, in 2022, that was the last Xmas event that we had. These were like 5K during the event. Super cheap, 5 to 8K maybe. Now they're 18K a piece a year or two later, almost 2 years later. You know, it's a long time, but doubling your profit essentially, or tripling if you bought for 5K within 2 years' time, is extremely good. You know, 300% return on investment, ROI, over 2 years is extremely high. If you're going to be playing PokeMMO for a really long time, sealed product literally might be the most important thing to buy on this entire list. Next up, number 8 is going to be the XP Re-Amplifier. Now, for a while, I wasn't a huge fan of the XP Re-Amplifier, but it did actually get some buffs over the past 6 to 12 months that made it a lot better, going from 50% XP split between the lead Pokemon and the rest of your party to 25%, really made it that much more powerful. XP Re-Amplifier, if you don't know, is basically an XP all. You just kind of turn it on and it acts as an XP all, transferring XP to your entire party and EVs to your entire party, so you don't have to buy 5 XP shares and such. The only problem is it's pretty expensive. It's 1,000 RP, which equates to like a 2 million or more Pokeyen fancy XP share, XP, you know, all. So it's pretty expensive. I wouldn't recommend it until you're like late game and have this level of Pokeyen to throw around, or if you're a new player and you just want to spend $10 on the game to support the developers, getting the XP Amplifier is probably not a bad thing to go ahead and pick up. But I think if you're at late mid game or end game, I think it's worth to pick up an XP Re-Amplifier at some point. Next up, number 9, not a very pragmatic option. This is more of a completionist one, or if you're someone who does tons of alt accounts or tons of storyline runs, the training link. The training link is really not worth it in my opinion, costing the same amount of Pokeyen as an XP Re-Amplifier. The main thing the training link allows you to do, and what it does, when held by a Pokemon, it prevents the holder from gaining any XP, but it doubles the EV gain. So you think, oh, let me double EV gain, that's amazing, let me make EV training that much faster. The problem is, when you speed up EV training like that, you miss out on the XP. So then you're speeding up, let's say you speed up EV training by 10 minutes. Well, now you have to just spend 10 more minutes XP training because you missed out on that 10 minutes of XP, if that makes sense. So it doesn't actually, it may save you a little bit of time. It's not actually that good. It's not that helpful. You need 1 per Pokemon. So if you want to EV train like 5 Pokemon, you need 5 training links. Usually you would just use 5 XP shares, which is, you know, 50K per XP share max, right? Versus training link is 2 mil per. So if you want 5 training links, it becomes 10 million Pokeyen. It's so not worth it. Like, the training link is only really good if you want to EV train a Pokemon while keeping them below level 20 for storyline runs, for alt account runs, for things like that. That's where the training link becomes really, really beneficial, is EV training a Pokemon but keeping them low level. You don't really need to do that in PokeMMO anymore. This item was actually called something else. I think it was the Amnesia Brace before. I actually used to own the Amnesia Brace, which is why I own the training link, and that's the only the only real world dollars I ever spent on PokeMMO was for the training link or / Amnesia Brace back in 2013. And the reason I spent it on it then was because in PokeMMO there wasn't a scale down for levels in PvP. So the way the PvP system worked back then was there was level 50 comps and level 100s, but basically nobody played 100s. Everybody just played 50s. So if your Pokemon were above level 50, you would be disqualified from PvP tournaments. There was no scale down, so not gaining XP on those Pokemon back then was actually really important. Nowadays, not so much. TLDR, you can buy Training Link as sort of a completionist thing, or if you do a ton of storylines. Otherwise, it's just something to spend your money on. Now for number 10, let's talk about the ultimate Giga Chad collector item, 6x0 Pokemon. Now I have tried to make a few 6x0s. I do own 2 of them. Thankfully, I think both of them were gifts. 6x0 Shuckle, 6x0 Bidoof, you know, very cool Pokemon by Aben. I think if I actually go ahead and go over to Advanced, I actually tried to make some at some point, but I messed up. Like, this was back when I was coming back to the game in 2021 or whatever. I don't even see them, to be fair. But, yeah, I think 6x0 Pokemon are very cool. Obviously, it's the counterpart to 6x. Here we go. It's the counterpart to 6x31 Pokemon. It's just, they're useless. They have the lowest stats. You wouldn't use them for anything. They're just a collector's piece. Get your favorite Pokemon, your weakest Pokemon, etc., etc. Make it a 6x0. Give it the worst stats possible, and then bam, boom, put it in your PC to rot. Next up, number 11 is non-OT shinies. Some people like to collect shiny Pokemon by just buying them. Now, let's talk about this. If you flex your non-OT shinies at the wrong moment or at the wrong time, you will get flamed. Honestly, if you flex your non-OT shinies at all in global chat, you will probably get flamed. Sometimes rightfully so, sometimes not rightfully so. The problem with non-OT shiny collecting is that it's so much, number one, it's so much easier to non-OT shiny collect. Like, it takes so much less time. It's ridiculous. And then also you can credit card swipe. So let's say, you know, I'm a guy who I have no time to play the game, but I want to act really cool in the game and I want to pretend that I play the game a ton. I could go buy, you know, some super expensive shiny. I could go buy shiny Charizard. I don't want to 2,000 hours to hunt that. No. Let me just go buy one and then oh, global chat, look what I have. I got a shiny Charizard, and they're like, LMAO, like non-OT, release it, KEKW. The problem is you could just credit card swipe, get the Pokeyen and just go buy it. Even if you were to like realistically like farm Pokeyen for a Charizard, the problem is it just takes so much less time to farm. Like, Pokeyen is so much easier to get than shinies in PokeMMO. I have a video on this called the Dratini equation, where essentially I went over the fact that to get a shiny Dratini, it was using the old numbers. Now it's changed, but it's kind of still the same. Back in the day, or like a year or two ago, to go for a shiny Dratini, it was around 150 hours on average. Or sorry, I think it was 500 hours back then. 500 hours on average to go for a shiny Dratini, versus it took you, if it cost 6 million Pokeyen, which is what it cost back then, now they're even cheaper, 6 million Pokeyen back then, you would divide that by 300,000 Pokeyen per hour. You can make way more than that. I make 400 to 600k per hour at my level of gameplay, pretty consistently doing breeding for profit and stuff. So instead of a 500 hour hunt to actually shiny hunt for an OT one, it was only 20 hours of gym reruns or Pokeyen making at a mediocre, like medium intermediate tier level, to be able to buy it. So it's just so much easier and so much faster to make people to buy it. So for some people, I think it's really cool. If you don't have thousands of hours to shiny hunt Pokemon, if you're a normal person with a family and a job, I think non-OT shiny collecting is very cool. The problem is you have to approach it with a grain of salt. If someone in global chat says, hey guys, I just worked so hard for this shiny Dratini, look at it, Pog, don't link your non-OT one. Don't, like, I always compare it to, like, it's the same thing as, like, if some 40-year-old man just bought a Lamborghini, he worked his entire life and has been saving up like $200 a month to eventually at 40 years old buy this Lamborghini, and then some 16-year-old whose dad bought him a Lamborghini for his 16th birthday says, hey, look, I have one too. There's nothing more frustrating than that experience because you worked hard for that thing. And in life, it's unfair. There's no really way to prove that. Like, it doesn't really matter in life. But in PokeMMO, we have an OT system to like show you guys who worked hard for things and what happened. So just be aware of that. I think non-OT shinies are a cool thing to collect and are a cool thing to buy for specific players. Do not think that they are the same, and do not try to compare them to OT shinies. But also, don't flame people. Try not to flame people for non-OT collecting. I think encouraging non-OT shinies is a great way to get more people to care about shinies. It helps the economy. I think it's just a positive thing overall. Non-OT shiny collecting is an awesome option. Stop attacking people for doing it, global chat. Thank you very much. Also, stop telling people I'm dead. Come on, knock that off. Anyways, number 12, let's jump into it. 2012 Pokemon. Now, this is up to you whether you want to buy them to quote-unquote invest or whether to collect. I kind of do a mixture of both. I'll buy that Rhyhorn. Why not? 2012, for those who don't know, is the first year that PokeMMO released, right? This was 12 years ago as I'm recording. Over 12 years ago by the date. The odds of these Pokemon, number one, the odds of you finding out about PokeMMO and then actually going to sign up for the game and go catch Pokemon, very low. Very few people played back then. And then number two, the odds of that Pokemon not being on a dead account. So many people were banned. So many people quit and never came back. The odds of that still existing. Number three, the odds of that Pokemon not being bred out of the game, since breeding consumes Pokemon. There are so many things that factor into why it's unbelievable. The number four, that player's still playing at all and coming back to actually want to sell it versus holding on to it for a collector's piece for them. There are so many things that make 2012 so rare. I always compare it to, once again, trading cards, base set Pokemon, Alpha for Magic the Gathering. There's only 88 2012s listed on the market at this current time. 2012s are super rare. They're super rare. Some people love to collect them the same way people collect base set Pokemon cards. I myself collect them. I also collect 2013s because that's the year that I started, so it's nostalgic for me. I don't really recommend buying 2013s nearly as much for an investment, but if you want to, you can. It's a collecting thing. But buying older Pokemon because you want to collect them or because you want to invest in them is a really cool way to spend your money. Now, number 13 is a difficult thing to find and a difficult thing to try to get your hands onto, but if you can find someone selling one, if you stumble across one on the GTL, congratulations. But there are no OT Pokemon in PokeMMO. Now, these were a glitched Pokemon back in 2022. During the Christmas event, the winter event in 2022, there was a glitch during that event where if you obtained a Pokemon from that event, it would come out without an OT. So that glitch only existed, I believe, for a few hours. I think it was literally around for like 3 or less hours, like a ridiculously short amount of time. If you were someone who was able to get some of those non-OT Pokemon, it's a big deal. I think I only have 2 of them or so. I don't have many, but I think I have 2 or so. And I'm really, really lucky to have those because they are just a very cool piece of PokeMMO history. To price check these is really hard. It's really hard to value something like this. I don't know what they would cost, honestly, but it's something to spend your Pokeyen on. Next up, number 14 is 5 experience shares. I'm a huge fan of pushing the 5 experience share meta. I think having the maximum amount of experience shares for Pokemon you'll ever be able to EV train in your party is really helpful. I used 5 experience shares for an extremely long time to EV train all my Pokemon before getting the Reamplifier. If you don't have 5 experience shares, I think it's a great thing to just go ahead and pick up and have for tons of XP training, EV training, etc. Just efficient, pragmatic, helpful 5 experience share, gang. Next up is multiple choice items. For number 15, I think having multiple of choice scarfs, choice bands, choice specs, all of these items are so powerful. It's good to have so many of them. I use choice scarf all the freaking time. Look at all these choice items that I have. Choice scarves. I probably have 5 choice scarves, probably 4 to 5 choice specs, and then probably maybe 2 or 3 choice bands. I use these items all the time, and I like to keep them on Pokemon. The more you have, the more you can keep them on your Pokemon and not have to switch them off and switch them around, and it can be kind of a pain and super annoying. Choice items are extremely good for PVM, extremely good for storyline runs, extremely good for PvP. Choice items are probably some of the most powerful items, probably if not the most powerful items, held items on Pokemon in PokeMMO. Boosting something by 5% or 50% at the cost of not being able to select another move is just super, super good. Eruption spamming choice spec Typhlosion can be relevant in PvP, super good in Jimmy runs, obviously. Choice items are just amazing. They can go up in value over time during like big events. They kind of can rise in price. Right now they're around 100k a piece or so each. You'll see these go anywhere from like 90 to 120k a piece, depending on the time period. But choice items are fantastic. I think having like 5 of each, it's a lot to shoot for, but 5 of each is probably the max you'll ever need. Following the choice item discussion, these ones may be a little less good in PVM on average, but there's still a lot of really cool PvP items, and they can be good in PVM in certain situations. But I think getting one of, for number 16, getting one of each important PvP item. So, for example, at least one Eviolite, at least one Rocky Helmet, at least one Life Orb, and at least one Assault Gear. There's some other things that could go in this, etc. There's other items that could go in this slot, but I think getting at least one of all of those items is a super important thing to buy in PokeMMO. Number 17 is going to be tons of berries. I think picking up a bunch of different berries, like lum berries especially, are some of the ones that I use the most in PVM and PvP situations. Custaps are awesome. Some of these berries get really expensive during events. If, let's say, a very specific berry, like a Kasib berry, is really good against the Pumpkin boss, for example, it weakens a ghost type attack. This all of a sudden shoots up. Like, not many people are farming Kasib berries, right? So this shoots up in price. So just stocking up on a couple of each berry is really, really good to do with your Pokeyen, and can be pretty convenient and just actually pragmatic and helpful. Also, getting like EV reducing berries is super nice to stock up on. Especially keeping like at least one of each EV reducing berry in your inventory. I kind of like that idea a ton. I don't even do that personally, but I should start, because then you can like have a full list in game of what berries reduce what EVs, as opposed to having to Google it each time. Number 18 is a fat stack of revives. You don't need max revives, but just the baby revives. I've used these at times to like save shinies, or I always think of this as a way to like save, not wipe against a shiny. If you're scared about XP trading at a certain spot, or kind of doing something at a certain spot where you might lose a shiny, revives can often help you not let that happen. Now, obviously, if the opposing shiny has like Final Gambit or something that just kills themselves outright, you're not reviving the opposing shiny, but what you're doing is you're chain reviving your own Pokemon to essentially stall for time, to give you an opportunity to do something in the fight, or for them to miss a battle, or for something to happen. Revives are just a really, really good safety net, number one in PVM, but also when shiny hunting is where I like to think about them and use them. Number 19 is going to be an Edge Shiny Hunt. This is going to cost you 120 to 150 million Pokeyen on average. Edge Shiny Hunts, on average, you're going to need like 30,000 Dittos. So if you take 30,000 times the price of Dittos right now, which are around like 3,500 after listing fees, if you kind of buy them from a seller, it's going to be, sorry, I did 3,000. 30,000 times 3,500, let's say, 105 million Pokeyen just in Dittos. That's not even assuming Pokeball prices, which you end up spending like 10 mil Pokeyen just on Pokeballs. Like 30,000 Pokeballs times 200 Pokeyen per Pokeball, you end up spending 6 mil Pokeyen just on Pokeballs. Something funny to consider during an Egg Shiny Hunt, let alone if you have to like pay for gender or do other things. Egg Shiny Hunts are super expensive, but it's also the only way, if you ever want a shiny Charizard, if you want a shiny Beldum, you can get them through other means, but the best way to get them, and pretty much the only way, is to Egg Shiny Hunt them. So if you ever want any of these amazing, cool, rare shinies, you're gonna have 120 to 150 million Pokeyen to spend on Egg Shinies. And then next up, something even more crazy and insane than Egg Shiny hunting is Shalfa hunting, or shiny alpha hunting, for example. So Shalfa hunting is going to cost you a whopping 1 to 2 billion Pokeyen. That is billion with a B, not an M. 1 to 2 billion Pokeyen on average to hunt for a Shalfa. The reason why, let's do one of the cheapest ones, for example, or not even this, it's one of the more common ones. Miltank. I actually Shalfa hunt Miltank a fair bit. Miltank is a female-only species, so you're only gonna need field male egg groups, which is honestly quite nice. But look at this: per Miltank roll, per shiny roll, you're gonna be spending around 40,000 Pokeyen 30,000 times. That's 1.2 billion Pokeyen expected cost on a Shalfa hunt. Not, oh, let's add in the extra 6 mil here isn't really that crazy, but yeah, Shalfa hunts are insane. And if you want to go for something like a Shalfa starter, or like a Shalfa in the Chaos egg group, or these other, but Gengar, it gets even more expensive. Shalfa hunts are one of the craziest things. If egg hunts are for the top 1%, Shalfa hunts are for the top 0.0001%. 1 to 2 billion Pokeyen is not a cost most people can do, but maybe you could get lucky. I don't know, do a little bit here and there. Number 21 is going to be to go over to any Pokemart in the entire game and buy a bunch of expert lures. I have 1,700 expert lures, as you can see, and I've burned through quite a lot of them. I think I bought 25 or 2,800 or so at one point. I've burned through 2,000 in the past. Expert lures are so good because you use them when grinding for Pokeyen, when single encountering. You use them whenever single encounter shunting, almost. Expert lures cost 1,500 Pokeyen a piece, and stocking up on a ton of them can be super good to do ahead of time. Expert lures are just one of the best items to be added to PokeMMO for a very long time. And it may feel unintuitive to spend Pokeyen just to go get more encounters, or, make, quote unquote, do you really make more Pokeyen per hour? Is it worth it? Expert lures only cost around 15,000 Pokeyen per hour. They are shockingly cheap to use expert lures. Premium lures and legendary lures aren't even on this list because that's how unworth they are. But expert lures are amazing. Sticking with the Pokemart theme, number 22 is stocking up on a variety of repels. I'm a huge fan of having different types of repels, and speaking of, I need way more of the baby repels. Having different amounts of different varieties of repels is actually super beneficial in my opinion, because different locations you need to travel to, you need different levels of steps. If you're popping a max repel every single time you're popping a repel, but you're only traveling like around 100 steps, a good example of this is from the Battlefront tier in Hoenn over to Artisan Cave. It's about exactly 100 steps. You only need one mini repel. But if you're popping a max repel on that trip every time, number one, you're wasting Pokeyen, and number two, you're also wasting time as you're sitting there running back and forth to wear off the repel steps to now be able to encounter those Smeargles. Number 23 is going to be stocking up on TMs for convenience when they get cheap from certain events, or just buying them from the shopping mall if you want to. If you head over to Unova and you go over to Oplucid City and then head over to the west over here to Route 9, you can head into the shopping mall here, and there is a TM shop right up here, but generally, you want to avoid buying TMs here. It depends. Most TMs, you do buy a lot of TMs here, but what this number is mostly about is buying TMs when they get cheap. So for example, Giga Drain. Giga Drain is currently 4,400 Pokeyen on the GTL. That's honestly pretty cheap, but it goes for 25k from a shopping mall. Now, Giga Drain has fallen off in PvP over time. It's very possible this TM never goes back up in price, but there are other TMs like that, like Thunderbolt, for example. Thunderbolt got really cheap, actually, at one point during certain events, because certain events will have certain items or TMs drop from their sealed product. So Thunderbolts came into the game a ton. They dropped to like 16 to 15 to 17k a piece, and now they're back up to 32k. So you could have bought a ton of Thunderbolts for half the price during that event. Number one, either made an investment and then sold them off to make Pokeyen, or just kept them for your own personal use to save a bunch of money in the future. So stocking up on TMs, specifically during events when they get cheap, is a really good use of your Pokeyen. Number 24 is vanities. It's hard to cover something like this in one just number slot. Like, there are so many types of vanities in the game. You can buy vanities for investments. You can buy vanities for, you know, personal flair and style. There's just, I'm going to scroll down my list. I mean, there's things like the Aura Beast Mane, the Suicune hat, the Werewolf Mask, the Eyeball stuff, the Venusaur hat, the Charizard robes, the Blastoise shell, the Bones cap. There are limited vanities, the UFO cap, the Bat hat. These are all just hats only. There's vanities that cost 10k, 20k, 1 million Pokeyen, 10 million Pokeyen, Kobons, Xmas present themed stuff, fishing themed vanities, bug themed vanities, tons and tons and tons, horns, animal stuff. There's tons of different vanities, Cthulhu, crazy, spooky stuff. There's so many vanities to buy. I think vanities are honestly one of the most fun endgame things to sort of pick up, whether it's for investments or whether it's for just the fun of it. Either fun of, I have so many worms, for example. Vanities are great. Vanities are fantastic. That's all just hats, by the way. So you have multiple hairstyles. These are all my back items. So I've got all the, like, there's so many vanities now. You can only wear so many vanities at a time, obviously, but it's cool to switch up styles. I do try to host these things called fashion contests every so often in PokeMMO. I don't do them that often, but I try to aim for every 3 months or so, and then that allows people to come show off their vanities and get rated based on their outfit, based on their uniqueness, creativity, design, color matching, etc., etc. You could spend all your Pokeyen you ever make on vanities and spend it on nothing else, and you'll be out of Pokeyen constantly. It's fantastic. Number 25 is going to be useful Pokeballs. Now, what I have down here for is number one, Pokeballs for breeding and just catching a bunch of Pokemon. Honestly, Pokeballs are probably the most like useful and my most used Pokeball in PokeMMO. Next up, Netballs. I think Netballs are so good they might get nerfed, to be totally honest. Whether you're catching Dittos with a Vaporeon to make them turn into that, Netballs have a 3.5 times catch rate if the Pokemon you're trying to catch is a bug type or a water type. Now, you can abuse this by using a Soak Smeargle and just turning every Pokemon you catch into a water type. So Netballs always super good. Timer balls are really good against alpha catches and just other really long battles like legendaries, for examples. And then dream balls are also super good. Dream balls are usually used against let's do dream balls really quick. Sorry. And dream balls are really good if you can get a Pokemon to be asleep for 2 turns. So let's say you spore it, it's asleep that turn, and then it's asleep for the next turn, which is really common. You have a 4 times chance at catch rate from my understanding. I use dream balls a ton. Dream balls have really outperformed what I expected. They're honestly super, super good. So top 4 Pokeballs or so: Pokeballs, Netballs, Timer Balls, Dream Balls. But you can always get more. There's tons that can become relevant at certain locations. Dive Balls are honestly underrated. And I like luxury balls for just the fun and flair of it. They're probably my favorite Pokeball in PokeMMO. Number 26 is niche PvP vanities. I'm talking your red cards. I'm talking your eject buttons, your shell bells, your binding bands. Like, there are niche items that do very niche things. Like, a binding band increases the power of binding moves. Things like Fire Spin. Now, why would you want this? Number 1, I think it's cool for the completionist aspect. And number 2, sometimes these things go bonkers in price. If something is good even for a moment, something as niche as binding band, for example, at one point during the Halloween event, back I think 2 years or so ago, binding band reached like 1 to 200,000 Pokeyen. It got really expensive. And do you want to know why? It's because it was supposed to be, or thought to be, really, really good for the Pumpkin boss. But then it wasn't even good. So people, like, the price of binding band got cranked up aggressively, and then the item wasn't even good in the boss. But there's literally none even listed on the GTL, so there's so few of them brought into the game. Binding band only comes into the game, from my understanding, from BP. So if you had BP, you could buy it with BP. Very niche item, but sometimes things like that happen and pop up in the market. I think it's also just good to have when you're trying to build a PvP team. I think going over to your like actual items and just seeing what you have access to really lays out the options at your team's disposal. So I think it's good to keep those things in mind. Next up, number 27 things to buy on this list is going to be multiple catching Pokemon. Breloom, Damp Parasects, Soak, Smeargles, etc. As you can see here, I have this is my baby, my Breloom that I've been using forever. I use this for everything. It's not that good statistically, but it works. It does an incredible job. It helps me catch pretty much every shiny, every Pokemon that I ever encounter. He does a fantastic job. I also have a Damp Parasect that I've been working on. I need to actually go ahead and level this thing up to level 100. Damp Parasect is honestly super good, and I've been really delayed on getting one because it's a great way to have a Damp Pokemon on a catching Pokemon. They're just good for certain shunts. I also have this random Ditto in the back for a Ditto strat that used to be the best method. Now it's no longer the best method, but it used to be really good. Speaking of Ditto catchers, I also have 2 Vaporeons for catching Dittos and catching Pokemon. You can stock up on tons of different catching Pokemon, and just having these prepared will help you for different shiny hunts, different money-making methods, etc., etc. If you search Smeargle in my boxes, I have these 2 Smeargles down here that are for fun, but then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 catching Smeargles, 5 different builds. This one is for self-destructing Pokemon. You can imprison them. This one is for Soak. This one is for Assist, which was a Ditto strategy at one point and other things. This one's specifically for shiny hunting Hoppip, since you need a specific Pokemon for that. And then this one is just a general payday False Swipe Spore catching Smeargle. You can do so many things with Smeargles. Having tons of catching Pokemon, especially multiple at level 100, makes catching alphas easier and catching all varieties of Pokemon just easier and more consistent. You absolutely have to spend money to make money in PokeMMO. Speaking of the catching stuff, number 28 is going to be a hidden ability access Spinda. Now, I've been saying for a long time, this is why it's called overrated. I do think Spinda is overrated, but it's still very good, and it's honestly really good for new players. I think if you're learning to catch alphas, using Spinda as a little bit of a crutch is really nice and really helpful. But if you have a bunch of catching Pokemon, good catching mons, you probably don't need Spinda. It probably just slows down the catch. But skill swap Contrary Spinda. Essentially, what you use this for is to skill swap Contrary onto alpha Pokemon. And alphas have this wild ability where if you fail a catch on them on a Pokeball, there's a chance they buff all their stats by +1. So if you skill swap Contrary and then throw like 2 Pokeballs and fail the catch, they minus all of their stats by -1 each time. So it's a really good way to sort of tame those alphas and make them more catchable. Number 29 is going to be Ocarinas. You don't need Ocarinas. They are the definition of paying for convenience, but some of them are really helpful. Things like Fly Ocarina, Fly, Surf, and Teleport are probably the best in my opinion. I have way too many of them because people have gifted me them over the years. They also make a really nice gift. If you want to gift something someone for Valentine's Day, Christmas, whatever, maybe it's their birthday in game, Ocarinas make a great gift because it's something you wouldn't really want to buy normally for efficiency, but it makes the game more convenient and a little more laid back and enjoyable. Next up, number 30 is going to be stocking up on breeding items for the sake of convenience, or specifically with BP to save Pokeyen, but we'll talk about that in a sec. By breeding items, I usually mean the breeding braces, or some of the end senses is fine. Everstones, I personally like to stock up on Everstones. I'll buy like 30 at a time or so, especially if they're ever at like a decent price. I currently have 25 Everstones in my, bag at the moment. It's really nice to stock up on some of these items so that when you're doing the breeds, you don't have to constantly go over to the shop, even though it is right there. Now, specifically, using BP to buy breeding braces saves you Pokeyen. I think the braces end up costing around 7.5k/8k Pokeyen in terms of exchange if you head over to the Battle Frontier and buy braces from the BP shops. So if you head over to the Battle Frontier in Hoenn and then head over to this BP shop, which you saw me do, you could head over here and buy the braces for 750 BP. And usually 1 BP is somewhere around 10 to 12 Pokeyen in terms of value. So being able to buy these for effectively 7.5 to 8k a piece is so much drastically better and more efficient than paying for 10k a piece with Pokeyen. All types of currencies are obviously worth something, so it's important to keep in mind they aren't just free. You can't just do that sort of math. Like, it's a expected lost cost sort of thing, but you do save money, and it is better if you do a lot of breeding for profit. Number 31 is to collect something like damp rocks. This is a joke collecting item. I actually have a couple of these. I collect damp rocks, I collect moo milks, and they all sort of started as a gag. Damp rocks was a friend of mine who used to say, oh, damp rocks to the moon, like, oh, damp rock economy, go hard, and it's all a joke. Like, we've been buying damp rocks for like 100 Pokeyen a piece. To be fair, it's kind of worked a little bit on accident, but the problem is I'm never selling. Number one, I'm never selling my damp rocks. Number two, they'll never sell. People kind of just buy them up now as a joke. No one actually needs 1,000 damp rocks. You really need 1 damp rock per person. And there's just so many of them that come into the game. So I don't see myself moving or selling those damp rocks anytime soon. And then moo milk. People just started sending me moo milk on stream via the mail. I don't remember why, or don't ask me why. But I think collecting a joke item is a lot of fun. It's similar to in old school RuneScape, people will collect things like chef's hats. I used to collect goblin mail, or some people will collect burnt food, for example. Next up, 32 is going to be collecting all of the evolution stones. Multiple of the evolution stones: dawn stones, fire stones, leaf, moon, oval, shiny stone, sunstone, water stone, thunderstone, or even things like the metal coat, for example, to evolve Scizor. Stocking up on evolution items can save you time and have you more convenient for you in the future. It's important to know you can just now use a metal coat on a Scizor as opposed to having to trade it to evolve it, so you don't actually have to have another player to help evolve that, which is super nice. You can just use the metal coat to evolve it. Next up, number 33 can either be used as an investment or a chance to gamble. I'm talking, of course, about mysterious balls. Now, mysterious balls are probably the best way to shiny hunt in Pokemon, and it kills me to say that because mysterious balls are the definition of pay to win. Unfortunately, you can just go credit card swipe, get RP vouchers, sell those RP vouchers, and then go buy mysterious balls, or you can go buy mysterious balls with just the Pokeyen you've earned by actually playing the game. But mysterious balls can have as low as I think the Ultra Ball has a 1 out of 2,500 shiny rate. So, but obviously they're expensive because of this. Mysterious balls, you can either go buy them to invest, you could hold on to them for a while and sell them later in the line. Now, not any investment is guaranteed. These might go down in price if they release a new set of mysterious balls, so try to keep that in mind. But I knew that as soon as these released, I bought up a ton. I was like, this is going to be an insane investment. This is the only way to pay to win to a shiny in PokeMMO. Opening mysterious balls can be a lot of fun, I will say. As much as I kind of hate them and wish they weren't in the game, it's probably one of the biggest problems in the game is that you can actually pay to win to a shiny. That's really sad to me. Probably the worst update we've maybe ever seen to PokeMMO. However, they're a lot of fun to open. They are a ton of fun. Seeing that shiny sprite flash across your screen as you open one is amazing. I do have one mysterious ball shiny personally, and it's something to dump your money into. Thing number 34 to buy within PokeMMO are fireworks. Really under talked about, honestly. If you want to celebrate your friend getting a shiny, you want to celebrate a team event happening, you want to celebrate anything in PokeMMO, go buy yourself some fireworks. They're actually super cheap on the GTL, so you can stock up on a ton and get a ton really quickly for really cheap, and they're just fun. Now, it is important to know you can only spam them or use them in certain regions. Like, you can't use fireworks in Kanto, for example. I know you can use them in Generation 5/Unova. You might be able to use them in Gen 4. Otherwise, I honestly don't use fireworks enough myself. I'm not totally sure, but go try them wherever you can. All right, next up, number 35 on our list of something to buy within PokeMMO are particle effects. I personally feel like particle effects are a massively underrated way to show some personality, and they can also act as an investment. So here is a particle effect Eon Mask with the Menacing Spirit particle effect. If you don't know what certain particle effects look like, it can be kind of tough to actually show everybody, but here it is. For this one, for example, it's like a little Spirit Tomb animation with some floating wisps all around. Kind of a delayed animation, but there you go. There is that one, which is called, once again, Menacing Spirit. That is from defeating the Pumpkin back in 2022. There are also things like the Spirit of Spring particle effect, which happened pretty recently. This was from the Lunar New Year event. I think this returns every single year. Just some cute little flowers floating down. Some of my personal favorite particle effects are the ones from the anniversary event, which include the anniversary cake, which has a giant cake slamming down on your Pokemon, which I think is kind of funny. And then also the Kanto Friends particle effect, which is probably my favorite particle effect in the game. If not the Kanto Friends, it's probably the shiny Kanto Friends, which has the 3 little Kanto starters jump out in front of your Pokemon right before a battle. As you notice here as well, I'm using my shiny Nidoking to show this off. To show you guys, you can actually select. I don't really put particle effects on shinies very often. It's not really my cup of tea, but a lot of people love to collect that, understandably so. Putting rare particle effects on your shinies is a very, very cool thing to do. But you can select either to enable your shiny particle effect so that when you go into battle, you have like the shiny sound effect and the shiny, particle effect, or you could have a particle effect selected if you have particle effects on that Pokemon, because the shiny particle effect, as you can see right there, is technically a particle effect. You can also put on the dice, which is essentially going to randomly choose one of these, going to coin flip 50-50. Or if you have like 10, you could have, 10, 20, 30 particle effects on a Pokemon if you truly wanted to. So now it's going to choose one of them randomly, and it chose the Kanto Friends one. Showing off particle effects in PvP, PvM, raids, your YouTube videos, whatever it may be, particle effects are very, very cool in my opinion. Now, some particle effects you can just straight up buy as items. So a good example is the shiny Kanto Friends particle effect, which I talked about, which would give you the same thing as the Kanto Friends, but they would come out shiny, which is really cool in my opinion. Some of them you can buy as an item and just use on your Pokemon, but some of them, like the normal Kanto Friends, hilariously, the shiny Kanto Friends you can buy, the normal Kanto Friends, the only way to get that particle effect onto a Pokemon, let's go find particle effect. We'll search for Kanto Friends where possible right here. The only way to actually get this on a Pokemon is to breed a Pokemon with the Kanto Friends particle effect onto that Pokemon, or to breed it in some way. It can be kind of tough to get these like limited time particle effects onto Pokemon, which is why you end up with particle effects costing disgusting amounts of Pokeyen, like the Pump Kid particle effect. Let's go ahead and find that really quick. The Pump Kid is a Pump Kid's treat. Yep. This is a 13 million, not even that, because this is female only species. This is a genderless species. This is more, 21 million, 20 million Pokeyen is around what you would call this for price on this particle. Because it's the first limited particle effect that came back in 2019. And yes, that thing has aged like a fine wine in value over the years. So they can be an investment as well. Thing number 36 to buy within PokeMMO are fossils. If you ever want to do a fossil shiny hunt, you need to be consistently and passively buying and stocking up on fossils. Otherwise, you're never gonna get enough to actually be able to get that shiny one day. Only so many fossils come into the game every day, and it's really easy for the price to get jacked up super quickly. Buying 50 or so fossils once a day is really important for the fossils you're interested into if you want to prep for them long term. I would say that was one of the hardest parts of my Cranidos hunt, was just slowly and consistently. It would take me like 3 to 6 months to stock up on the amount of fossils that I would use within a week. So to give you guys kind of an example right now, let's go ahead and check how many skull fossils are on the GTL. This is probably around 70 or so, I would guess, on the front page. Maybe 100 after that page. Okay, let's say 120, 100, and let's say 200. There's some 20s and 50s here. Let's say we're at 200 fossils. Okay, well now we're at, you know, 13k a piece. There's a 90 stack here. Let's say this goes up to 350, 360, 375, let's call that. Okay, there's another 92 stack, but you're paying 14k a piece for those. Keep in mind, now it's getting really expensive. Okay, so let's say we're at like 500. No, 550 fossils. Let's say right about there. And then we've, okay, reach here. That's the last of the skull fossils. So even if you're willing to pay up to 20k per skull fossils, let's say there's 600, let's say, fuck it, let's say there's 700 skull fossils on the market, right now in total, and that's if you drastically overpay. Could you guess how many hours of fossil hunting that is? It's less than 2. It's less than 2 hours. You could buy up the entire market of skull fossils, and that would, you know, cost you so much Pokeyen, and it would only last you about 2 hours of hunting. This is why long term, you just have to really stock up fossils passively. I think a really smart thing to do is to set a price that you're willing to pay and then never buy fossils above that price. So for example, I don't buy any fossils above 6k. If I ever do another fossil shunt ever again, I actually don't care what the shiny is. I'm just kind of interested in rare shinies at this point, less interested in the exact species. I will never buy any fossil below 6k. I'll go ahead and buy, no problem, but that's kind of the benchmark that I've set for myself. I won't pay over 6k for any fossil at the current time. 37, stock up on Leppa berries. I know I talked about berries earlier, but Leppa berries are kind of different and can be used in a couple different ways. Mostly Leppa berries are used for shiny hunting. There are certain shiny hunts that require Leppas. If it's a ×5 horde that is so far from a PC, you need Leppas. Things like the Ditto shiny hunt. Things like Golett is a great shiny hunt that needs Leppas. There's a lot of really cool Leppa shunts that a lot of people want to do. Delibird, Horsey, for example. But you can also use Leppa berries for XP training. Just sticking at an XP training spot that is far from a PC that maybe gets you a lot more XP and also has a good shiny. All right, not a super efficient one that I would recommend to new players or players without a ton of Pokeyen laying around, but number 38 is to stock up on vitamins. You just never know when you might need an emergency, like tack on some extra EVs onto a Pokemon before a PvP tournament, before a PVM or a boss fight. Like, I remember when Johto came out, I really quickly wanted to get things prepared to be able to do the red fight as soon as possible, to do that day one content, and using vitamins to kind of abuse that was really helpful. Or when I was making my EV training, or my Ditto catching Vaporeons, I was constantly tacking on and off EVs trying to find the right calculation, and using vitamins and EV reducing berries for that was way more convenient. So just having a bunch of vitamins laying around is honestly nice. The way that I've gotten these vitamins is over the years, if I ever do an opening video of sealed product, which I don't recommend, but I'll do it for the content sometimes, I just keep all the vitamins. You get a lot of vitamins randomly from opening sealed product, so I just kind of have kept all of those vitamins over the years. Number 39 is alpha Pokemon, specifically after an alpha swarm. I'm a huge fan of buying alphas after a recent swarm, because a lot of the time what happens is someone will, every player goes, catches this swarm alpha, and they all just immediately head back to the GTL and list them. And it's like, when that happens, the price of that egg group and the price of that species just kind of tanks. So if you're just willing to wait a little, this is actually a good example. So it's like this Fearow was literally just caught in Kanto 11:35 a.m. This seems like today's date. So this was caught around 1 minute ago, and it's being mass listed on the GTL. So what I would do, for example, let's say that I want to go for a flying Shalfa. Something you could do is go search for like male flying egg group alphas, and look, it's all Fearows right now because someone is trying to sell them all off because they're all being mass caught right now. And making investments in times like this, or buying them for breeders, or buying if you want to go for a Shalfa, buying breeders in that way, stocking up on alphas when they're super cheap because there's currently an alpha swarm for it is really important. You can tell it's a Fearow alpha swarm when, you know, 8 or 7 out of the 10 first listings are all Fearows. If you're not in my Discord or don't check global chat or have a team chat, etc., you can also just find out about when alpha swarms are happening sometimes through the market like that, which is kind of funny. Number 40 is going to be event Pokemon during the event. And what I mean by this is that there are certain Pokemon that are released during an event that end up getting really expensive down the line, or end up holding their value, or kind of they're very limited, but they're really needed for a lot of things. A good example of this is hidden ability Excadrills and Drillburs. These were only available during the recent Lunar New Year event around 4 months or so ago. And Mold Breaker Excadrill is really good in OU PvP because it allows it to set up Stealth Rocks through Magic Bounce ability, which is really powerful. And it's just a good Pokemon in general. So now hidden ability Drillburs and Excadrills are worth 600,000 Pokeyen apiece, well, you could have bought them during the event for around 100k, 80k, maybe 200k at their maximum. Now, no investment is guaranteed, and I want to always encourage that sentiment. For example, I bought a bunch of hidden ability Dragonairs and Dratinis as breeders during this time with hidden ability access, because hidden ability access Dragonairs, Dratinis, and Dragonites were all pretty expensive at that time because people really needed them for PvP. The multi-scale Dragonite is so much better than the non-multi-scale Dragonite. We can go check the PvP stats, and I'm pretty sure the usage is going to be like 97.79% versus 2%. So I bought a bunch of these for 10k, and they haven't gone up. They're still 10k, so it didn't actually turn out to be a good investment. And the issue with Pokemon investments versus item investments is that items can just sit in your bag. You can have infinite bag space, but for Pokemon space, you only have so much PC space, so it's quite limited in terms of your resources to actually store your investments. Next up, number 41 is going to be utility Pokemon. There's a reason why I have boxes and boxes full of utility Pokemon in my PC. There are so many different types of utility Pokemon. Things from cute charm Pokemon to synchronized Pokemon, which is why you see so many Kadabras and Alakazams around my PC generally. You've got your swarm Pokemon. I usually use my shinies like my Scolipede or my Spinarak, for example, but you can also need like specifically leveled. Like I used a level 55 Arena Trap Dugtrio for a while, for example, because that was like the level you needed to repel trick at a certain location. I have many videos talking about utility Pokemon, and there's just so many that could be listed here, and there's tons that you could buy and pick up to own. Number 42 is a specific kind of utility Pokemon, but it's honestly really underrated. I don't really use it too much, but a lot of people swear by a Pokemon like Teddiursa that has Pickup, Earthquake, and Sweet Scent. So you can use just Teddiursa to pick up some items as you XP train Pokemon, kill obviously all the hordes with Earthquake, Rock Slide, and use Sweet Scent to actually gather those hordes. Now, it's really important because when you have a Pokemon like this, it allows you to have 5 other slots in your inventory to actually EV train or XP train, so you free up the maximum amount of slots. Now, a similar Pokemon that I do use an absolute ton is Pikachu with Sweet Scent, Surf, and Discharge, but it doesn't have access to Pickup, so I might want to start trying out that Teddiursa a bit more. Number 43 are level 100 PVM Pokemon. These aren't like your level 50s that you're only going to need for PvP, and these are Pokemon that are natured and trained specifically for PVM. For example, in PvP, normally you'd want to go like a plus speed nature on something like Hydreigon, or a plus speed nature on something like Blastoise, but in PVM, usually you don't need that much speed, you need more damage. So damage ends up being more important. You would go like Modest on your Blastoise as opposed to a plus speed nature, or on a Crocodile, for example, normally you would go, normally you would go like Jolly in PvP, but you'd end up going Adamant or something like that in PVM. Especially with raids around the corner, leveling your Pokemon to level 100 has literally never been more important. It's going to be so relevant, and I think a lot more people are going to have to be doing a ton more XP training. Number 44, another type of utility Pokemon, Payday Pickup Meowths. Payday Pickup is one of the most consistent ways to make Pokeyen and PokeMMO. It's also very brain dead. If you want to turn your brain off, watch a TV show, watch a movie, watch anime, whatever you want to do, watch your favorite YouTuber, PokeMMO related or not, just turn your brain off, run back and forth, do some encounters, and click Payday against whatever Pokemon you see. You will get the actual yen from the Payday, and it's just really consistent Pokeyen per hour. Usually the more Payday Pickup Meowths you have, the longer you're able to stay at that spot without healing, which does slightly increase your Pokeyen per hour. Now, you do want to make sure to never evolve them into Persian, because Persian actually can't get the pickup ability, and that's where most of your Pokeyen comes in from. I think around 40 to 60% of your Pokeyen comes from pickup rather than just the Payday yen itself, so make sure to not let them evolve while leveling them and keep them a Meowth. Next up, number 45 is a super good required utility Pokemon, which is a hilarious sentence to be saying nowadays. You'd never thought this would have happened a year or two ago. This is Special Attacking Rampardos. Now, the reason you need this is because this is one of the only Pokemon, there's only 2 Pokemon you can use to farm at the best XP training spot in PokeMMO, which is over at Mount Silver. Let's head over there. So over here at Mount Silver in Johto, which you do need the Pokedex completed, caught OT to have access to. This is end game content, keep in mind, so not everybody's going to have to worry about this. But this is the very best way to XP train in the entire game now. And at this location, you'll see ×5 hordes of Donphan and Dodrio, right? So for Dodrio, you obviously need to hit them with an ability that would kill them. It's not really that big of a deal. Sure, Surf works. However, why do you need to be special attacking Rampardos? The reason is you also have to kill Donphan. And Donphan has Sturdy. So you need a Mold Breaker Pokemon that is also special attacking because Donphan is so physically defensive. Even with the insane attack stat on Rampardos, he cannot Earthquake and kill Donphans. Donphan is too physically bulky. It won't die, even to the strongest of Rampardos. So you do end up going special attacking, and hilariously, Surf, Mold Breaker, special attacking, Rash, third level attack. This kind of Rampardos is the best way to XP train in the game. You could also use a Haxorus. That is the alternative Pokemon, but Haxorus, from my understanding, is just worse than Rampardos, just slightly. So whichever one you prefer. The only thing that matters is the special attack here. So Haxorus has 60 special attack, and I'm pretty sure Rampardos has 65. That's the only difference. Thing number 46 to buy within PokeMMO is a high-level Ghost-type Pokemon like a Spiritomb that is pretty tanky as well. I don't recommend going something like Chandelure for this because it has Flame Body and it could burn the opposing Pokemon. You want a high-level Ghost-type like this to save shiny Pokemon. There are certain shiny encounters that will try to feint themselves. Things like Takedown Rapidash, things like Final Gambit, Basculin. If you happen to encounter a Final Gambit Basculin or a shiny Basculin at all, the odds are it has Final Gambit. That thing is just going to OKO himself. It immediately feints himself to use that move, but if you bring in a Ghost type Pokemon, it won't allow him. With a shiny rate of 1 out of 30,000 in PokeMMO, making sure they stay alive is worth every single penny. Next up, thing number 47 to buy within PokeMMO is going to make you more money after you buy it. It's a Frist Thiefing Bayonet. You can buy any sort of Frist Thief Pokemon, to be totally honest. Bayonet is just the one that I have personally. It was gifted to me a while ago. A level 100 Pokemon with Frist and Thief. It allows you to use Sweet Scent and get ×5 hordes of Pokemon. Look to see if the Pokemon have an item. Try to thief that item off of those Pokemon and then leave the battle and then keep that item. It's used for Amulet Coin farming, Flame Orb farming, Deep Sea Scale farming. There's just certain items and certain money-making methods that abuse these Pokemon. Next up, number 48. We vaguely touched on these earlier when going over catching Pokemon, but these are pretty specific. These are Ditto catching Vaporeon. Now, I will have a guide out on these by the time you guys see this video. This is the new best way to catch Dittos within PokeMMO, to my understanding, using this exact EV spread with this exact lonely nature on both of them, with these exact IVs, 31 attack, 0 defense. Once again, if you want the exact, detailed breakdown of these Pokemon, check it out. You need Yawn, Payday, and then 2 water moves on each of them, plus Silt Scarf. They're very specific Pokemon, but they're a really cool way to catch Dittos while making Pokeyen with Payday, and having a chance for Legendary over in Johto. Number 49 is a bit of a guilty pleasure one, but this is collecting competitive Pokemon that aren't that good, mediocre statted Pokemon or just straight up bad species of Pokemon for competitive, for example. I love collecting bad competitive Pokemon. It's something that I super enjoy. When was the last time you saw Meganium compete in PvP? When was the last time you saw Stunfisk, compete in PvP? Oh, Stunfisk has never been meta in PvP? Okay, well, I've got at least one comp of him. Oh, what about Musharna? Musharna, I know it has Healing Wish and it fits that niche in Pokemon, kind of cool, but not that good. Oh, non-Shell Smash Torterra? Yeah, I've got 2 of those, not to brag. I'm a huge fan of collecting either old comps that are kind of outdated and aren't really good. I have 2 Claydolls. I have variants of so many comps that just aren't even considered good Pokemon at all. Meanwhile, I'm over here with 6 different competitive Shuckles because, you know what, man? I like Shuckle, man. It's fun for me. It's cool for me to collect it. I've got multiple competitive Delibirds, Whiscash, a bunch of Pokemon, Sunflora, Sunkern, Tropius, Vespiquen. a bunch of Pokemon that are not good competitive Pokemon, but it makes me really happy, and I really enjoy sitting down, breeding these up, you know, EV training them, putting some love and care into them, and making them exist. I'm not making them good, not even making them the best I can do, honestly, but I think creating them, crafting them, and having them collected is a fun thing for me. If you're like that, go ahead and go try it. Number 50 is going to be amulet coins and riches charms. Stocking up on these whenever they get cheap or whenever you have the extra cash is a fantastic way to guarantee you'll be able to make more cash down the line. These are used for gym reruns every single day. So if you do gym reruns personally, stocking up on these whenever they get cheap or whenever you have the extra cash, like I said, so you don't spend it on other stuff. It's basically like making sure you're investing your Pokeyen in a way to make more Pokeyen, which is honestly a really nice thing to do if you have trouble spending too much of your Pokeyen. Probably shouldn't be watching this video if you have a problem with that, but you know, this is a great way to spend some of it, but also making sure you're making Pokeyen back from that guaranteed. So stocking up on amulet coins and riches charms is number 50. Number 51 is a trainer rerun cloister. Now, this is a strategy that I'm actually not super familiar with yet. I've actually just recently built this cloister to start learning it and start doing the strategy. There are other guides out there on YouTube, I'm sure. If not, hopefully maybe my guide is out by then, by this video, but it might not be. I'm sure there's plenty of fantastic guides on the topic. 2v2 attack, 2v2 speed, icicle spear PP maxed, skill link ability, and then a plus attack nature. It's actually really easy. Apparently, like, you can run, someone said you could rerun this with like a 6x0 bold cloister and you're still gonna obliterate all the trainers. So really easy gym rerun-esque type activity. You make around 150 to 200k Pokeyen per hour doing it. You can do it every 6 hours versus every 18 with gym reruns. I think it's a really underrated money-making method, honestly. Number 52 is to pimp out your secret base. A lot of people don't realize that you can go spend tons of BP on pretty rare and expensive like Poké Dolls and a slide, cute TV, round TVs, all these like really weird items you can put in your secret base. I think way more people should be investing Pokeyen and BP into their secret bases. This Blastoise doll, for example, costing 25k BP, that's the equivalent to a fair amount of Pokeyen. Let's actually go ahead and run that math. If it's 25k BP, so 25,000, 1 BP, it's 25k 600. 1 BP is around 10 Pokeyen. So you would take this and multiply it by 10. Like, that's the equivalent of 256,000 Pokeyen spent on just a cosmetic in your secret base, and I'm very here for that. All right, 53 is where the wealth gap really starts to hit, ladies and gentlemen. 53 is high-end vanities, okay? I am talking your scythes. I'm talking, you know, minimum 80 mil plus vanities. I'm talking scythe, you know, 500, 600, 700 mil is the cheapest scythe listed on the GTL at the moment, but it's a very cool vanity. I'm talking your Holly hair clips, which, you know, in comparison to these other ones, only 80 mil Pokeyen, you know, it's absolutely nothing. I'm talking your Jack-O-Lanterns. Let's go ahead and see Jack-O-Lantern, your 1 billion vanities. There are vanities that reach these levels of prices. I'm talking your ghostly sheets or ghostly outfit is one that's around a couple billion. Your electric storms around 13 to 15 billion. Your Desu lab coats around 15 billion. Your Q hats around 10 to 15 billion Pokeyen. Billion with a B, not the M. The flaming skull masks. People love the flaming skull masks. They're a really beautiful vanity. Here's an example of an E-Storm, for example, on the red right there. We can try to find a flaming skull mask. Thankfully, there's a lot of rich players in Team Mister, so I can always use them for vanities that I do not even have a chance at owning anytime soon. Here's a red Reaper hood. I mean, that's a pretty cool vanity as well, around 50 mil or so. Eyeball mask, red Reaper hood. Someone's got to have there's the Jack-O-Lantern mask in action. Someone's got to have a, there we go, flaming skull mask. Thank you, Turtle, for always having it equipped. Flaming skull mask come in a few different colors. There's like the orange, which is this one. There's the blue, I believe. These end up costing around 2 billion or so. It's kind of always changing. Don't take my word for it as law on the prices on stuff like this, because it's really hard to price check stuff like this. It's literally, these items are too expensive to be sold on the GTL. Like, they exceed the Pokeyen limit on the GTL. They exceed the max cash stack in the game, but they are that valuable and that rare. So keep it in mind. It's something you can buy if you get rich enough and you have the Pokeyen, but number 53 is high-end vanities. Number 54 is staff OT Pokemon and just other OT Pokemon of things that you want to collect. So for example, I have this Squirtle Spinarak. Now, this Spinarak was from a catch event. It's not a real Squirtle OT Pokemon, if that makes sense. He just spawns it into the game for a catch event prize, but it's not actually something he caught. But like specifically things like Squirtle OT Pokemon, Q, Bearminator, these are a lot of like pretty popular staff members that don't really play the game too much anymore because they're usually too busy working on the game or helping out in the community, which only makes sense. But it also makes their OTs that much rarer and like harder to come by because there's only so many Pokemon caught by them. I also like one of my favorite Pokemon is this Blossom, this competitive Blossom from 2014, which was like, this was a menace back in the day, like Hidden Power Ground, because you couldn't switch Hidden Power back in the day. Hidden Power Ground, this moveset, Blossom, like this was considered an S tier PvP competitive threat back then. And it has the OT GB Weed, and I love this guy. He's been in the community forever. He's just been in the PokeMMO scene forever. He's been a PvPer, competitive, like advocating for things with the tier council and stuff. Really, really active guy for a long time. And you kind of notice those names when people really start to care about the game and actively give good criticisms and feedbacks, and you start to care about those OTs. So collecting cool OT Pokemon or staff OT Pokemon is number 54. Number 55 is going to be legendaries. Whether you want to buy them or buy the lures to collect them and go for them yourself, you're probably going to have to spend some amount of Pokeyen on legendaries. I would recommend just going for expert lures and just running back and forth and swarm, going for them. But if you want to buy them, I get it. You only really want to go for OT legendaries if you care about collecting purposes. If you're not much of a collector and you just want to have them, or you don't really care about OT, you can just buy them all to collect them. That's also totally okay. I kind of encourage it. Shutdowns and legendaries is a pain in the butt, and it's not really worth the time, to be totally honest. So I respect those who just want to go outright and buy them all. Number 56 is an underrated, talked about thing in PokeMMO. There's not really a benefit to it, or you don't make any Pokeyen from it. It's kind of just a completionist thing, but completing your Alpha Pokedex is very cool to me. It's a really cool completionist thing. Now, the way you do that, why it's like a buy thing, you don't go wild catch all of the Pokemon to complete your Alpha Dex. That's not how it works. What you do is you get your complete normal Pokedex, and then you just go buy the Alphas off the GTL and then breed them all once and level them up, and then bam boom, you have a complete Alpha Dex. Alpha Dex is a buyable thing, hilariously. So if I were to go like buy, for example, an Alpha Poliwrath, breed it down to a Poliwag, it would then have my OT, and then I would level it up to a Poliwrath and I'd have the whole line OT. Same with like a Charizard. The starters are gonna be some of the most expensive ones, but like everything you're buying here to breed it down, you're gonna like basically gonna make Pokeyen, or at least net neutral for the most part. Like you're gonna buy something, you're gonna breed up the IVs, you're then gonna spend time to level it up, and then you're gonna sell it off for like the same amount of Pokeyen, if not more Pokeyen. It's just gonna cost you time to do this, but I think it's a really, really cool goal, honestly, that not enough people shoot for. This next one is honestly something that I need to do a little bit more. Number 57 is honey for honey tree runs. I'm super low, as you can see. Honey tree runs are a pretty interesting way to get a lot of very rare shinies. Things like Munchlax, Burmy, Combee, Apom. Like there are it's a shocking amount. Cherubi. There's a shocking amount of banger rare shinies that spawn from honey trees in Hoenn, and you have to slather 3 honey on like per tree if you want to go for them. And you can only check a honey tree once every hour, so it's really important to make sure you stock up on honey to make sure you can actually do your honey trees. Now, the way to do that is to head over to Philoma Town and then head to the top left and then go talk to this guy. This guy you can just buy stacks and stacks of honey from. Obviously, it's pretty expensive is the main problem, like $750 a piece. It ends up costing you like 2,200 Pokeyen or something like that per honey tree check. But it is technically cheaper to do this. If you're going to egg for some of those shinies anyway, a lot of those shinies are just egg shinies, it is technically cheaper to do this. So it's up to you. It depends if you really like those shinies or not. Next up, number 58 is a classic from Team Mister. It's saving up and stocking up on Sweethearts to send to the boys and King's Rocks to send to the homies to remind them they've dropped their crown and that they are in fact a king today. Little sweet, cute, like lore-based items to attach to mails to wish someone a happy birthday or a happy holiday in some way. It's just a really sweet way to hype up the homies, which is clearly the most important thing in PokeMMO, so I keep a fat stack of Sweethearts on me. Next up, number 59 is kind of an underrated one once again, and I'm actually super glad that I try to keep a couple of these on me. Well, as I say that, it seems like I have none. Poké Dolls and escape ropes. Poké Dolls are actually super nice to keep on you because sometimes you end up getting locked in a battle that you didn't intend to, either if you lead with a Pokemon that was too low level to actually be able to run from the battle, or if you are in against a like shadow tag Pokemon like Wobbuffet. I've had that happen personally. Making sure to go to like a late game Pokemart and picking up some Pokedolls, just in case. Having like 10 to 20 Pokedolls on you, in my opinion, I'm probably gonna go buy some right now, honestly, is super worth it. And then on top of that, we got a 2-for-1 at 59 Pokedolls and escape ropes. Escape ropes, similar situation. Just in case you get stuck in a cave and happen to forget your dig Pokemon, you can always go ahead and click the escape rope. It's a nice little safety net. Number 60 is going to be stocking up on heart scales. Number 1 for convenience, and number 2 if they raise in price or get buffed or nerfed. There was actually a time recently where I said heart scales were super cheap. They were at like 3k Pokeyen or so a piece for a while. I stocked up on a ton of them, and then an update came out that removed the ability to relearn moves via mushrooms. And it also decreased the drop rates of heart scales. And now all of a sudden, heart scales went from like 3 to 4k a piece all the way up to like 8k a piece at the time, and they're still around that 8k price mark. So things like that just happen. So stocking up on certain items like that are super important. Heart scales, if you don't know, are the main item used to, or the only item now used to relearn moves on Pokemon. And relearning moves on Pokemon is something that I do constantly. Like, it is a constant thing you have to kind of do with on competitive PVM, like whatever Pokemon it may be. You go talk to this gray-haired, silver-haired guy, and you can relearn moves on a Pokemon. Like relearning Sketch on Smeargle is a great example. If you want to change your Smeargle's moveset at level 100 especially, the only way to do so is to relearn Sketch on him multiple times. So heart scales are constantly consumed from the game, and we constantly need more of them. Next up, number 61 is even a mechanic that I don't understand very well, so I might have to pay someone if I wanted to do this. It's paying for a ribbon service on the forums. I actually made a video talking about this recently in my 63 money making methods video, where you can actually offer a ribbon trading service. If you learn how ribbons work in PokeMMO, people are willing to pay like 4 million Pokeyen to get all the ribbons on your Pokemon. So something you could spend your money is kind of the opposite, where you could make money by learning the ribbon system. If you don't want to learn it, want to save your time, you could go pay someone to get all of the ribbons on your rare shinies to flex them for you. And following the same vein are going to be number 62 and 63. I talked about these in my 63 money making methods as well. XP and EV training services are number 62. If you're an endgame player, you want to save time, you want to save your energy. If you're too busy at work, too busy with something else, you can pay someone else to XP train and EV train your Pokemon for you and just save you time so you can do other things. And then following that, number 63 is going to be artwork on the forums. You can actually pay people to do things like signatures on the forums, to do PokeMMO related artwork. It has to be Pokemon related artwork, usually to use in game or on the forums, but you can pay people with Pokeyen for that artwork. And likewise, if you're an artist, you can make money off it, which I think is really, really cool that they offer an ability in a way for artists to make money in game using their skills. I think it's one of the most underrated things in PokeMMO. And I know this is supposed to be 63 tips, but I thought of a bonus one at the very end that was too good to pass up on, and it's going to be PC expansion drives. If you are an endgame player, you realize how quickly your PC starts filling up, and if you ever want to do an egg hunt ever at all, you pretty much need PC expansion drives. These are going to expand the amount of PC slots you have in your storage by 60 Pokemon each time you use them, but they are also really expensive. Like, as you can see, I have like 27 or something PC boxes, and it allows me to do a lot of things and shiny hunt a lot of Pokemon and keep a lot of Pokemon and breed a lot for profit and just store tons of things that otherwise I would be stopgapped way sooner and have to like sell off things way sooner and kind of get rid of things, and it would be a lot more difficult to manage without that many boxes. You can always do the budget man's option of using alt accounts for PC space like that, and I do really encourage and recommend that for 90% of players. It's really, if you want to do an egg hunt, you are going to need some PC expansion drives. But that is it. I believe that is everything. Shout out to Team Mister and my fiance for helping me make this video. The suggestions, the brainstorming, the feedback is really, really helpful with helping me come up with those last 10 or 20 or so ideas. So thank you guys again so very much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was fun, enjoyable, helpful, got some ideas spurring in your brain on things to do in PokeMMO, some goals to set, some things to buy. This game is all about setting your own goals, and this is kind of a way to do that, and also just a fun way to kind of show you guys how to spend your Pokeyen and follow up that 63 Moneymakers video. So hopefully you guys continue to enjoy this style of content. Like it if you did enjoy it. Dislike if not, that's okay. Subscribe to the channel. Check if you're subscribed if you want to see daily PokeMMO videos. Discord's down below if you're interested in that. You can follow me on Twitch for streams. And then if you want to go above and beyond and support the content, if my content has helped your PokeMMO journey enough and you can afford it, if you find yourself watching my content in the background a ton while you grind, it helps me tremendously. YouTube memberships, Twitch primes, Twitch subs, and PayPal/Venmo donations do really allow me to do this kind of content. I couldn't do it without that support. So thank you all so much who do go above and beyond and give that support. Have a great day. I will see you guys later. Enjoy PokeMMO. Peace, Reno. Hey, thank you so very much for watching until the very end of the video. That means the world to me, and everyone on this list means even more to me for helping support the channel every single day. Thanks so much.